Welcome to Whisper of the Oracle. I'm Juha Saarnilampi. Today we talk about Nuu Alluring Desire. She was just revealed a few days ago, and ever since I've been very mystified by her hero ability, trying to figure out if it's good or if it's horrible. It's one of the few heroes that gives your opponent's deck building the agency on that. Nuu Alluring Desire is a 4 intellect, 40 health mystic assassin hero that says your attacks with stealth get, when this chain link resolves, banish all action cards defending this. It also says instant for 3 chi, look at the top card of an opposing hero's deck. If it's blue, you may banish it. Until end of turn, you may play blue cards from that hero's banished zone without paying their resource cost. So first of all, the first ability really does banish all of the action cards that are defending your stealth attacks. And that's of course relevant for the second ability if they're blocking with blues, but it's also relevant for contract cards, especially. If you can chain contract cards and stealth cards, this becomes interesting. The second ability, of course, the first thing you notice is that it costs chi, and we have no idea yet what chi is, but we'll just have to assume it's something generated by your gameplay actions. It's probably not going to be as simple as pitching mystic cards. I think that was refuted pretty early on. It costs 3 of those, and how difficult they are to generate, we don't know. And there are 3 parts you should notice. You look at the top of an opposing hero's deck. So that's number 1, and that's sometimes useful by itself. Very, very rarely, but it could in some edge cases be useful to know the top card of the deck. If it's blue, you may banish it. Notice you may banish it, you don't have to banish it. There might be cases when you don't want to, if you want them to, let's say, draw that card instead. And then until end of turn, you may play blue cards from that hero's banished zone without paying their resource cost. And this is very important. It doesn't matter how they got there. You could have banished them with this ability, you could have banished them with your first hero ability, or they could have banished them themselves with Kano's ability, Katsu's ability, Vincent's ability, Mechanologist's just boosting stuff, for example. There's so many opportunities where you get to use this even though you didn't sort of deserve it. They kind of caused it themselves. And it's a really cool ability. It's kind of taking the card Infiltrate and putting steroids on it, other than the fact that you only get to play the mopiest cards of your opponent's decks, the blue cards. But other than that, you get to use this multiple times per game, multiple times per turn even. If they've banished a bunch of stuff that are attack reactions or go again non-attacks or whatever, you get to use this or play, all of those cards out from there without paying anything for them. Let's look at some of the edge cases for where these abilities get interesting. First, imagine a chain where you attack with a contract card, you give it go again, for example with the snappies here, and then you attack with a stealth card. Every blocking action card that fulfills the requirement on your contract cards is now giving you silver. So if you attack with Leave No Witnesses, they block it. You snappies your Leave No Witnesses, and then you attack with Infect. They block with a red whatever action card. Well, you're getting a silver. This is like the simplest way to use it, but of course the problem is that your contract cards very rarely tend to have go again. Second edge case is when you attack with a contract card, and then while the combat chain is still active, you activate Nuu, and you hit a blue off the top that also happens to fulfill the requirement on your contract card. Well, that also kind of gives you a bonus silver. So let's say the simplest one, of course, is that you attack with Surgical Extraction, and then you activate Nuu. If there's a blue on top, you're automatically getting another silver if you banish that. It's a little bit trickier with Annihilate the Armed or Plunder the Poor, because the blue also needs to be whatever these cards are looking for. But anyway, that's another way to generate silver with Nuu's ability. A third case is, let's say you attack with Leave No Witnesses and you hit. Maybe they didn't have an arsenal, so they didn't care that much about it hitting. Well, you can kind of give yourself 2 chances to hit a red off the top if you really need the silver. Respond to the on-hit trigger by activating Nuu. If there's a red card on top, well, you couldn't banish it anyway, but then you're getting the silver. If there's a blue card on top, you get to banish that with Nuu, and you kind of get a re-roll on it being a red card for Leave No Witnesses. So these are sort of 3 ways in which you can use contract cards and Nuu's ability to generate silver for your advantage. A fourth, probably even more rare case, is something like a Clash ability blocking your card. So let's say you attack with Infect, they block with Clash of Agility. They reveal the top card of their deck, and it's a blue. Well, now you know that you have a certain hit with Nuu's ability, and instead of speculating on whether you should activate it or not, you know that now's the time Finally, let's look at what is Nuu good against. With the current knowledge, there's a huge discrepancy on your hero ability strength or power level depending on who you are facing. So in S tier, I have Guardians. And why is that? They're running a lot of blues, and those blues tend to be big attacks. They attack for 6 or 7 or 8. So getting to play one of those for free is super, super valuable. What else is up here in the S tier is Teklovossen. And why is that? Because Teklo's Evos are also action cards. And what your first ability says is that if your opponent is blocking your stealth attacks with action cards, they get banished when the chain link resolves. And that's not something that your Teklo opponent wants, because that also gets rid of their base equipment, which means that they can't play Evos in that slot anymore. Levia here is for a completely different reason, but still related to the same ability. The early game, when all Levia wants to do is fill her graveyard with 6s and not banish any Blood Debt cards yet until she's ready to go, ready to start the train, and that then keeps on going until the end of the game. Now she can't do that. Toward the end, then we have, well, 3 heroes that basically don't play many blues, in at least if it's a Raiden Bolton. So Raiden Bolton, Azalea, and Riptide, they don't play a lot of blues, and if they do play a lot of blues, or the blues that they play are generally not super good for you, except for Riptide. I mean, Riptide plays very few blues, but the ones he plays, they're actually kind of interesting because they are the most powerful traps. But that's a very rare case that you happen to banish one of those. And then we have Fai and Katsu. Their blues are really mopey. Even though they have a good amount of them, you don't really want to pay chi or whatever that resource is to get a 0 for 1 or a 0 for 2 without go again from their banish zone. Then we have Kano, same story, really mopey blues, and they always cost an action point for you. And then in the middle, we have some sort of A tier and B tier matchups where the A tiers are more, they either have pretty good blues like KO, a lot of 0 for 5s for you. That's fantastic. Or they have something else going on. So Kasai would really like to block with their yellows, many of their yellows quite often, and even some reds early on in the game so they can start activating their ability. But if all of those blocks go to the banish zone, they can't fill their graveyard as usual. Vincent is a related but a weird problem where blocking with their Blood Debt cards starts accumulating Blood Debt a little bit too fast compared to how fast they can clear it. However, there is also the downside that if they are, they can block, for example, with their final card in their hand, and that gets banished, and then they can still play that. So they can kind of play around their own banish ability by blocking with that card instead of leaving it in their hand to be banished at the start of their turn. Olympia runs a lot of blues, and many of them are reactions. So they can be played all in one turn, for example, so that really, really helps. And Prism has some 0 for 5s for you, and especially the Heralds of Protection are really, really good. And the B tier heroes then are kind of in the middle. They kind of have mopey blues, but some of them can be useful, or in the case of the mechs, they banish their own blues. So if Dash or Dash.io ever banishes a Teklo core, well, that's really, really good news for you, because that's that works for you as well. But the blue 0 to 60s and so on, they're of course pretty bad. The good thing with the assassins is that you have synergies with their cards. So let's say you get a surgical extraction, well, fantastic, you probably have pumps for that surgical extraction, etc. And they might also banish some shreds or something. So that's how I see it. I think it depends entirely on the meta based on current information whether she's going to be good or not. That's of course worrying, because as I said, it gives the agency to your opponent and the meta itself to decide whether Nuu is good or not. So for now, I'm holding my judgment. I think she is by far the coolest hero in the set. She's probably one of the coolest heroes ever printed. It's just a fantastically interesting ability, but I'm holding my breath on whether it's going to be strong or not. Thank you for watching. I will see you next time.